shows you products from Big Daddy Unlimited's inventory. And what he does is not only demonstrate them and talk about them, but he shows you the manufactured suggested retail price. He shows you basically what would be the average of the internet price. And then he shows you the BDU discount price. And you will just jump out of your chair when you see the difference in the cost savings. You can't beat it. So check it out. We also, I'm going to give you another little teaser. I just signed a couple contracts with some brand new sponsors. Let's just say that you're in the not too distant future, you're going to be able to be healthy, wealthier, and wise. Wise listening to John Martin Talks. Wealthy because we're going to be selling you precious metals. And healthy because we got vitamins and we're going to be giving some away. Details to follow. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show today. This first article comes to you from The Hill. Democrats gamble on GOP caving in debt ceiling. Now, there you got Turtlehead Joe and old Chucky Schumer. They're really flip sides of the same coin. One is the minority leader, the other is the majority leader. And I hate to tell you, but it really don't matter. It doesn't seem to matter. They keep flip-flopping back and forth, and they're fine with that. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Congress is barreling toward a high-stakes showdown over the nation's borrowing limit, with neither party ready to blink. Now, if you had to bet, they're talking about betting here. If you had to bet that the Republicans will cave or the Democrats will give in, who would you bet on? I personally, I would bet on the Republicans caving. Why? Because they always do, it seems like, right? Congressional leaders will soon need to find a way to pass legislation raising or suspending the debt ceiling or risk a default. Oh my God, that sounds terrible, right? A default that could have catastrophic ramifications for global financial markets. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a lie, and it's told over and over. And a lie told over and over, guess what? It's still a lie. I mean, it goes back to the Nazis, right? With Goebbels, they're talking about, if you tell a lie long and loud enough, it becomes the truth, man. Let me just explain this to you, ladies and gentlemen, in very simple terms. There can be no default. Yeah, I said that. There is no way for the U.S. government to default on its debt obligations. It's not possible. And you say, well, if they don't raise the debt ceiling, I'm just telling you, it's not possible. Because under federal law, the debt has to be paid first. There's plenty of money coming in. There are, in the last several years, every year, and I can't swear to this one, but there have been record tax revenues come in literally every year for about the last decade, and even more so under Donald Trump. The way federal law, I can't say it any simpler, there cannot be a default on the debt. So they're telling you a lie when they turn around and talk about, oh, if we don't get this debt ceiling raised, we're going to default, we're going to be bankrupt, and we're going to be a debtor nation, which we are already, by the way. But the reality is the debt has to be paid by federal law. It's just the way it is. Now, what would happen is, yes, there would have to be cuts in all kinds of programs. And I'm not saying that if we don't raise the debt ceiling, that it won't have some economic consequences. But this idea that we would default on our debt is simply a lie. There's no other way to put it. So far, they, talking about Congress, appear to content to play, the Democrats that is, to play a game of chicken reminiscent of the 2011 standoff that resulted in the S&P, that Standard & Poor's, taking the historic step of downgrading U.S. credit rating. And that is true. They did. But it was not because there was a default or an imminent default. There was no default in 2011. There would not have been a default even if they didn't raise the debt ceiling. So Standard & Poor's lowered the United States credit score basically for multiple reasons, but none of which had to do with a default, because it never happened and never was going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I've told you, I've made a commitment to you, me and Billy Bob here. If you haven't met my psychic sidekick, he's Billy Bob Bass. Well, he's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1. And mine is at John Martin Talks, and he keeps me straight here on the show. And we're determined to stay in the public square. So spread the word, share our stories, share our show across social media. We got to defeat old algorithms. So like what we're doing, share what we're doing, comment on what we're doing, Put it in your favorites if you want to, and we would greatly appreciate that. But Billy Bob will tell you that I'm telling the truth all along. There can be no default. One option for the Democrats would be, hang on a minute, screen back right. One option for the Democrats would be to try to raise the debt ceiling on their own as part of a $3.5 trillion spending package they will try to pass this year under budget rules that let them avoid the need for GOP votes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really at the core of what's happening here. The GOP, the senators, specifically Mitch McConnell, but also the House members, has to pass both. They are trying to play a game where the Democrats will be forced to approve the debt ceiling just on their own. Thereby, they own the deficit spending. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, at the same, and I don't think that's a bad strategy. But at the end of the day, we're being played because the Republicans have no problem raising the debt limit. They're just trying to play politics, and maybe that's the way it should be. But instead, it says, talking about the Democrats appear to be betting that Republicans will ultimately put up the votes to help raise the spending limit. Well, when you see what's been happening, that's not much of a bet, right? We talked about it on yesterday's show, and one of the best ways to see our podcast, by the way, is to go to America's Voice News. They're an alternative to the mainstream media. They're on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Channel 219, Dish Network, and the Pluto channel. They have free downloads on your Android and your iPhone. Our show is archived there in 3-part segments on a daily basis. Just go to their streaming service, whichever one you're looking at. It's free, and go to the shows tab and you will see it. But this is not much of a bet, really, because as I talked about yesterday, there were 18 senators, rhinos, Republicans, that voted to approve this infrastructure bill that has Zippo to do with infrastructure, and in fact is an amnesty bill. It's getting hot up in here, so I'm sweating for you. The budget resolution unveiled by Senate Democrats on Monday that sets up the $3.5 trillion. Boy, they keep everything is a trillion, right? Trillion here, trillion there. The $3.5 trillion spending plan doesn't mention the debt ceiling. It also does not include 2 summaries, including a memo to Democratic senators that explain what they'll include in the $3.5 trillion bill they want to pass. So it's another one of these things where we have to pass it to see what's in it, right? But I have to tell you, and I don't say this with any glee whatsoever, I'm not so sure it matters. Do you know what I'm talking about? Well, hang on, I'll tell you. I'm not so sure it matters what they do, whether they spend $3.5 trillion, whether they pass the debt ceiling or not, whether they have a balanced budget, which we know they're not. Because until we change something drastically in Congress, which are the people sitting there on both sides of the aisle, there's no courage for a balanced budget. No one is even proposing a balanced budget, nor have they for a long time. Even under Donald Trump, as much as I hate to say this, Donald Trump was not all that fiscally conservative, right? And they raised the debt ceiling. They passed these omnibus bills. The biggest disappointment that I had in President Trump, and there are a few, overall I think Donald Trump was a great president, and I'm hoping he will be a great president once again. But the reality is neither the Democrats nor the Republicans nor any of the past or current presidents actually give 2 hoots, it seems like, about the deficit. They squawk about it like the Republicans are squawking about it now, but they did nothing when they had the power. And I believe Donald Trump, in fairness to him, I believe had he had an opportunity, he would have passed a balanced budget. But the Republicans, even when they had total control, never were going to do it. It takes courage to do that, and it's going to take courage to actually overcome that. And I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell said from the Senate floor, yes, old turtlehead Mitch, Democrats have all the existing tools they need to raise debt limit on a partisan basis. And he's right about that. He said if they want 50 lockstep Democrat votes to spend trillions and trillions more, they can find 50 Democrat votes to finance it. Let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I made this commitment to you several years ago. When we're being played, I'm going to tell you, we're being played by both sides of this. There's no heroes in this. The Republicans standing up is pure politics. And as I say, the flip side, they would do the same thing. You know, they all are all about keeping their power, keeping the cash flowing to Washington. That is one of the things they hated about Donald Trump, the never Trumpers, and really Mitch McConnell was a never Trumper. He still is. And they hated Donald Trump because he exposed the swamp and the depth and the rats at the trough for what it is. But understand this, and I've been saying this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. Both parties are certainly capable of being the minority party. The Democrats are actually better at it because they always act like they have the majority no matter what, right? I mean, they right now they got a 3-vote majority in the House, and you would think that they're overwhelmingly basically tied in the Senate, and they don't have control of the Supreme Court. At least they shouldn't have. But they act as if they're running the whole show. Of course, they have the White House, the man that got the most ballots. But don't feel sorry for these Republicans at all, because they're really, really good at being the minority party. People like Mitch McConnell are quite comfortable at being the minority party because why? They can squawk all they want to squawk. They can raise a ton of money, but they don't have to do anything because they can say, well, we don't have the party. You didn't vote for us in Georgia. And the reality is when they had the majority, what did they do? Zippo, they hamstrung President Trump at every level. So, I just get tired of hearing it. I almost didn't report this story, but I think it's important. But it's mostly important for the total BS that they're feeding us. The hard line, back to the story, the hard line on the debt ceiling comes as Republicans have returned to their Obama-era deficit hawk leanings after brushing off the debt under 4 years of big spending former President Trump. And that's true in that sense. I think it's a bit harsh the way they word it there, but Donald Trump and the Republicans spent money like drunken sailors too, just different drunken sailors. That's all. But they hadn't tried to balance the budget, man. No ifs, ands, or buts. We have not had a balanced budget. I can't even remember. I probably didn't have any gray in my head the last time, if then. And let me just tell you, they talk about cutting spending. Oh, we had to cut spending. Republicans and Democrats both guilty of that. They never cut spending. They never cut the budget. Do you understand that? I talked about this, I believe, a little bit yesterday. They never cut the budget. Let me simplify this for you. If you had, let's say, your household or your business, and you had, for simple math, a $100,000 budget last year, and this year, you looked like you were going to be more profitable, so you had a $120,000 budget, and you were trying to figure, so, okay, we got $20,000 more than we had last year. How are we going to spend it? So you started budget for it. And then all of a sudden you said, maybe I ought to save some of that money. So instead of budgeting that extra $20,000, I'm just going to budget $10,000 of it. And you would say, okay, that's savings. Well, that to Congress is a budget cut. Their budget went up by $10,000. Well, it was going to be 20, proposed 20,000, and they cut it down to 10. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a budget cut. It is not a budget cut. Is it a cut in the rate of spending? That is all we've ever done. We don't have a balanced budget. There's no stomach for it, right? And then, of course, this article, it goes on to give examples of Republican senators like Rob Portman and others, a large part of that 18 that voted to screw us the MAGA agenda yesterday, as I talked about with this infrastructure. But people like Rob Portman and Lindsey Graham, he's got all this. And I started to read, what they said, but I decided to just edit it all out because it's just these senators spouting off. It's tired and boring. It's the same old claptrap over and over again. So back to this article. So if you want to read what Lindsey Graham had to say and Rob Portman, check out the article in The Hill. I'd encourage you to read it, and you'll probably feel the same way I do. It's kind of like one of those hand dryers in the bathroom, and they should put above it, to hear from your senator, push here, because that's all you're really going to hear. When exactly, back to the article, Congress needs to act remains unclear. The spending limit kicked back in on August 1st after Congress and the Trump administration agreed to suspend it in 2019. And the Treasury Department has since been using extraordinary measures to keep the government solvent. as I tell you, it's going to be solvent. Sorry about me being, I get hot under the collar when I talk about this. It's all nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. There is no default. There is no threat of default. It cannot happen legally. The money is there to pay our debt. They just don't want to. They want to make it sound like, oh, we got to raise the debt ceiling so you get your, your free ice cream or whatever. But I love how they say that the Treasury Department has been using extraordinary measures, right? I mean, come on, man. How much BS do they expect us to actually eat? What's that thing? We got good news and bad news. Well, what's for supper? Bullshit. But the good news is there's plenty of it. And that's what they want us to eat by the shovelful. I've said this before, but if I say it bears repeating. I'm half joking, but I'm also pretty serious. I know this is not going to happen. But I've got a radical plan to fix all of this. And I'll give you the total solution here in just a moment. But my plan would be to shut Congress down. Just shut it down for a decade. They already still, I think, got parts of it fenced off, so it's protected. They could reinstall the fence if they want to worry about people going in there. But they just shut Congress down for a decade. Keep the budget the same as it is right now. Every department, even the ones that I totally disagree with, wasteful, keep them the same. Just cut them by 1% every year for 10 years. I guarantee you we'd be a better country after that. To me, there's no doubt. And there's plenty of jobs for these people to take. They're everywhere, right? The Bipartisan Policy Center estimates, and you know what bipartisan, by the way, if you're new to the show, pay attention to this. Bipartisanship, let me just tell you what it means. I know what the textbook says it means. I know what the article is implying. I'm sure that the Bipartisan Policy Center means well, but the reality is bipartisanship means Republicans cave. That's all it ever means. It means Republicans cave, period. Because name me, I've been challenging people this. Chime in on whatever social network you're watching us on, and I'll respond to you as quickly as possible. I could do a month. We could do the rest of the year on shows about times when Democrats were for something and Republicans were adamantly opposed to it, and the Republicans caved to the Democrats. It's just, there's tons of examples of that. I can't even think of one. It may be out there, so let me know. Show me one where Republicans were adamantly for something and Democrats were adamantly opposed to it. And they said, them old Republicans are right, and came the Republican side. It never, ever happens. So bipartisanship, according to John Martin Talks, means Republicans cave every time. Tell me where I'm wrong. But the Bipartisan Policy Center estimates the so-called X date. Remember our excluded site, drop the E, put the big X, the X date, when the sky is going to fall and we're going to default, even though we're never going to default, or the point at which the U.S. government will be unable to fully meet its financial obligations on time. That's a lie. Will arrive at some point this fall. So, ladies and gentlemen, man, check out this next meme I got up here. This pretty much shows what they believe of us, the American people. They feed us with all this BS. We keep wading through it. My only advice to you, ladies and gentlemen, you find yourself wading through all of this BS, don't sit down. This is really the American people. We're expected to slog through all this stuff, no matter how much it stinks, and just accept it like, oh, it's reality. We can't default. No, we're not going to default. We're not going to default. It's not legally possible. It's a lie, and I'm tired of hearing it. The House is back to the article, the House is out of Washington until late September, talking about the House of Representatives. And the Senate is poised to leave this week, what they call the August recess, returning in mid-September. That could put the debt fight front and center when the lawmakers return next month. Like I say, just let them stay home. Give them a permanent furlough. There's plenty of help wanted out there. And as far as Congress, we've been needing help in Congress for a long, long time. And there's not much job qualification, really. You can be a total idiot and get all the way to the White House. So, let alone members of Congress. So help wanted, man. Just put out the help wanted sign. I don't know if you want to hire these congressmen. I don't know about their work ethic or what, but it would be simple to replace them, right? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, was it Yellen? I guess she's always yelling, right? She actually says something that I agree with here, but warned in a statement that failing to raise the debt ceiling would cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy and the livelihoods of Americans. That is a lie. I don't agree with that part. But this is the part I think that I do actually agree with. She said this: Congress should do so again now by increasing or suspending the debt limit on a bipartisan, which means Republicans cave, basis. The vast majority of the debt, this is the part that I actually agree with. She said the vast majority of the debt subject to debt limit was accrued prior to this administration. Of course, they're not going to leave. The Biden administration is hell-bent and determined to be the #1 deficit spender of all time, and I think they're already there. But she says this is a shared responsibility. On that part, I 100% agree, because the blame for where we are financially is pretty much equal on Democrats and Republicans. I'm not giving the Republicans a pass on it. It'd be easier to focus on how crazy the Democrats are spending now, and they are, but I'm not going to let the Republicans off the hook in any way, shape, or form, because they have helped dig this hole pretty deep. The Democrats are just doing it on steroids. But I told you I was going to propose you a solution. I told you about my radical idea of shutting Congress down for a decade and then cutting the budget by 1% a year. But this is the ultimate solution, and you've seen it before. But my friend Kitty Cat, man, he shows you what I would do. If I could cast one vote, it would be this vote right here. Show him, Kitty Cat, show him. He's about ready to do it. Around the bowl and down the dadgum hole. If I could cast only one vote, and would be to flush the whole system out, including some of my friends up there, because it'd be worth it. Get rid of all the scallywags, flush the swamp in one shot. It ain't gonna happen, but boy, can we, dream big if you're gonna dream, right? Senate, and listen to this right here. This next paragraph tells you all you need to know about deficit spending, the budget, and the total BS up here. Listen to this right here. Senate Budget Committee Chairman Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the Senate Budget Committee Chairman. What does that tell you? Right there. That there is no stomach for cutting the budget. The Democrats they put Bernie in charge of the budget. The guy that wants to have a $10 trillion infrastructure program. Yeah, that dude, that guy, that fiscal conservative Bernie Sanders, who hadn't had a job in his whole life other than politics, and until he became mayor of Burlington, I guess, up there or whatever, he was basically a couch surfer. Yeah, that dude is the head of the budget in the Senate for the Democrats. That pretty much tells you all you need to know. But this is what Chairman Bernie said. Senate Budget Committee Chairman Bernie Sanders on Monday was carrying a paper with previous quotes from McConnell about not allowing the country to default. And I think that's very fair of Bernie to do that, because Mitch McConnell is, he's part of the problem. But this is what Bernie said. Just coincidentally, these are all the quotes of Mitch McConnell, who has said he will never have America default. And he's right. Okay, I agree with you, Bernie. You're all of y'all are full of crap. They're all full of crap. And like I say, I'd flush them all. We're being played. We're just being played, pure and simple, ladies and gentlemen. You know what we need to do? You remember that saying that was during the Obama administration? Conservatives were saying, we need to take our country back, right? And they were all talking about, we need to take it back from Obama. But I don't agree with that. Obama's gone. Presidents come and go. Of course, he's still in office. The Biden administration is the third term of Obama. But ladies and gentlemen, we do need to take our country back. But you know what we need to take it back from? We need to take it back from the theme of my show. Ignorance and apathy. I battle it on a daily basis. Our own ignorance about how special this country is, this experiment that could go away in a blink of an eye, called the United States of America, and our apathy that we won't do anything and everything to save her. We won't do anything about it. So the people we really need to take this country back from is our own ignorance and apathy. We have got to get truly woke. If not us, who? The Chinese? I mean, I'm not talking about Chinese American. You know what I'm talking about. The Democrats, the Republicans, are they really going to solve our problem? If not us, if not the American people, if not now, when? If not us, who? Who's going to do this? We have got to rise up. We have got to be politically activated. We got to educate ourselves and others, motivate ourselves and others, activate ourselves and others, which means do something. It is our responsibility. My dad used to always say that we get the exact government we deserve because we either vote for it or we don't. We're apathetic, which sometimes is even worse than actually voting. So the challenge really is up to us. And I've been telling you this, and I'll conclude this part of the show and we'll move on to the next segment. I've been saying this for the last week or so, and I think it's so true. Basically, the way I see it is we are devolving or evolving, however you want to look at it, into three classes or groups of people. And one is the billionaires. I call them the citizens of the earth because they're not really, may or may not be American citizens, but they live in a whole nother world. They're flying around in their peckerhead rockets. You know what I'm talking about. The billionaire class, and they're mostly Democrats. And then there's the totally dependent on sucking on the government teat class. That's what the Democratic base is. They want everybody to be totally dependent on the federal government. So therefore, any cut to their power is a cut to your bottom line. And then the third class is the rest of us. The rest of us that are just trying to make it. We may or may not agree politically, but we're trying our best we can to live the American dream. We believe in the Constitution. We may disagree on aspects of it, but we believe in the fundamentals of the Bill of Rights and all of that kind of stuff. The rest of us, somehow, the rest of us have to come together to stop the billionaires from just literally, they're trying to lead the planet. The government teat people are basically like the chicken that keeps going back to the cocaine kind of thing. That type of thing is happening all the time. It's up to the rest of, if not us, who? If not now, when? And we are behind the eight ball, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we got a few minutes left in the show. Let me move on to this next story. And it's potentially good news. There's old Pinocchio Joe. Yes, that is a meme. His nose is not really that big, but it might as well be. This comes to you from the Washington Examiner. Independents cooling on Biden spells trouble for Democrats in 2022. Biden's surprising and steady approval ratings are starting to crater. I wonder why. I guess his policies are actually taking hold. Though his disapproval numbers have consistently climbed during the first 6 months of his administration, that is a foreboding trend for Democrats before the 2022 midterm elections. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't get these states right, which we are, and we make sure we stop that America, For America Act or whatever, which means you're going to get stuck. I'm talking about the federalizing of our elections. If we keep on the trend and get that straightened out, we got a real chance in 2022. Democrats before the 2020 midterm elections, when the party is clinging on to power with the slim majorities in the House. So, it's hard to fight free ice cream. I don't care what. Think about it. Joe Biden is free ice cream. There's old Joe, man. Ice cream for everybody. That really isn't Joe, but it's kind of pretty close, right? But clinging on to slim power, right? That's what they say. The Democrats, as I told you, are good at that because they act as if they are in total control all the time, and the Republicans are perfectly at ease being in the minority because they can squawk and talk, raise a bunch of money, and not be responsible for anything. But according to Suffolk University pollster David Paleogos, and I hope I'm saying his name right, I'm trying to get my screen right. Guess I got to keep moving it. Summary, there we go. I'm still learning this teleprompter, man. I know, no wonder old Ice Cream Joe has trouble. Old Johnny Martin has trouble too. According to Suffolk University pollster David Paleos, a dent in a president's popularity after an initial honeymoon period is a typical and early signal that the incumbent party is vulnerable in the midterms. It's normal for that to happen, to lose in the midterms. I mean, President Trump had the same situation. And this is what Mr. Paleo said. He said, a lot can happen between now and then, and the downward trajectory could change to the upside, but this trend seems to align with historical norms. See, the problem, the Democrats, they cannot run on their record. What are they going to run on? the highest inflation in decades. Gas prices going up to an all-time high. Went from energy independence to dependence now. We went from historical accords for peace in the Middle East to total turmoil over now. We lost Benjamin Netanyahu, for God's sakes, over in Israel. And it's just crazier and crazier. They cannot run on their record. They're going to run on the record of COVID while they're flooding us with COVID patients from the South, that kind of thing. They have to have fear. The Democrats can't run on their record. They can only run on fear. There's no Trump right now. I mean, as much as they want to make Trump the boogeyman, he's not the boogeyman right now. The whole January 6th, terrorist thing, insurrection is kind of petered out, right? I'm sure they're going to try to kickstart it again, but it has backfired to a certain extent on it. It hasn't gained a lot of traction. So what do? They bring back the COVID scare, ladies and gentlemen. And if you think mask mandates are bad and all that, wait till their poll numbers continue to drop, and we're going to end up being in hazmat suits, man. I'm telling you right now. But the pandemic is back. It's back. And I'm not downplaying the virus or the implications. But trust me on this. That's what we're going to look like right there if Biden's poll numbers continue to drop and the Democrats in general. But the pandemic is back. I'm not downplaying the effects of the pandemic of COVID-19 or the variants in any way, shape, or form. But I got to tell you a quick story. I was at a kind of social function last night, and there was about a dozen people there, and they were all small business owners, doctors, lawyers, restaurateur, owners, restaurants, those kind of things. And I know them really well. I hadn't talked to them in a while. And I was just amazed at how COVID was the only thing they wanted to talk about. They literally, and these people are wealthy. They're traveling the world. They're living the American dream. But they are totally terrified of COVID, man. They are living in fear. It dominated every aspect of the conversation. And I was just sitting back. I chimed in a couple of times. John Martin does talk, as they say. But I was just amazed and taken aback by how obsessed they were about COVID. And I kind of reminded them of this, but I think I haven't played this in a while. But let's remember what a person who had COVID said about whether or not it should dominate your life. Check it out.
Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We're going back. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know.
You cannot let COVID run your life. And yes, Donald Trump, to answer one of your questions, we do miss you. I mean, that to me is true leadership. There, he had COVID, he faced it, he wasn't downplaying it. Donald Trump, we wouldn't even love or hate whatever the vaccines are. You wouldn't have a vaccine if it weren't for Donald Trump and Warp Speed. And yes, Donald Trump has not only taken the vaccine, but came out in favor and told people to take the vaccine. Donald Trump has been called everything but a child of God for all of that kind of stuff. And some people who are supporters of Trump don't agree with him on certain things when it comes to the vaccine. It's America. We have freedom to do that. But man, I'm glad I played that video again, because that video really says a lot. And that's what I tried to tell my compadres last night. You cannot let COVID dominate your life. When did we become a nation of just total fear mongers? We were basic. If you think about the people that built this nation to come across on those tiny boats, to span the Rocky Mountains and get out to California, all of that kind of thing, as imperfect as they were, man, what courage we're built upon. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we are trembling in fear. It just breaks my heart to see that. And I'm not downplaying the virus. Don't misunderstand me. I'm simply saying that we always have a challenge. Every American generation has had a challenge. Is this any different than World War II, so to speak, or whatever? I mean, come on, man. We got our freedom through fighting and slogging and persevering. If we want to be free, we got to do the same thing. Freedom has never been free, and it takes courage and personal responsibility to be a free citizen in this country. Back to this article. The 2022 midterm election cycle will be determined by voter turnout, similar to elections before, but Peleos, who's this expert on elections, the contest, he said, but for Peleos, the contest and Biden's waning popularity will also hinge on independent voters. Biden's ploy to appeal to them with bipartisanship does not appear to be working. Well, amen. Do you hear this, senators? Do you hear this, Republicans? In the House, this Democratic pollster is telling you that bipartisanship is not working for the independents. So why are you caving in to Joe Dadgum Biden, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi, for God's sakes? Peleos' observations are reflected in a Gallup polling according to Marquette Law School poll director Charles Franklin. About 55% of independents approved of Biden in June. That number sank to 47% last month. Well, I've got basically what I call a 40% rule. And it's still, I've seen nothing to basically change it. This is where the independents come in. Because 40% of the people are going to vote for Republicans no matter what happens, what they say or do. And another 40% are going to vote, obviously, for the Democrats no matter what happens. What really comes to play is that other 20% made up of both Republicans, Democrats, independents, and other parties. How do they vote? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what will turn 2022, 2024 back around for us. So I'm appealing to those Americans to wake up and help us. And if you want to know why the Democrats may be slipping in the polling, I want to play you this video. This is Cori Bush. She's a freshman, a Democrat from Ferguson, Missouri, where the hands up, don't shoot lie was first told, right, with Michael Brown shooting. She is a admitted member of Black Lives Matter, an activist, and she is leading the way to defund police departments. I want you to hear this short snippet of why she says she need to spend over $70,000 in for personal security, and is willing to spend a whole lot more, even though her own constituents she is taking police from, and they can't probably afford to spend $10 on personal security unless they go like the Big Daddy Unlimited and buy a gun. Check it out, our sponsors. You'll get factory direct pricing delivered directly to your door. But I want to play you this video of Cori Bush. It speaks for itself. Check it out.
I won't let them get that off. You can't get that off. I'm going to make sure I have security, because I know I have had attempts on my life, and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend 10 more dollars on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets.
So she's saying if she has to spend $200,000 on personal security, then now keep this in mind, these are some of the poorest people in the country, and some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country in Ferguson, Missouri, her base of support, her district, and she's telling them to what? Suck it up, punks. Suck it up, man. If I spend $200,000, $10, whatever I spend, I got to have it to do the people's work up here. But you back home, man, suck it up. What about those people in Chicago where we had police officers killed? Did you see they turned their backs on Mayor Lightfoot the other day? Suck it up if you're living in one of those neighborhoods, If people are getting shot in strollers in New York City, suck it up, man. I mean, is it any wonder that the Democrats are falling behind with independents? I don't see how. If you're a Democrat, let me just ask you this. Are you not ashamed to have someone like Cori Bush representing your party in America's House? Really? I mean, are you really down with that? Because that's what has taken over the Democratic Party. And she is very, very popular among the progressive Democrats. To me, it says a lot. But she says, if you don't like me, suck it up, punks. All right, we're going to close with briefly with this last story. I didn't put it on the list, but I want to put it on your radar screen because it's from Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas. I have a lot of respect for Senator Cotton. He might be a candidate in 2024 for president should Donald Trump not run, and he would certainly deserve every consideration. But this is a Breitbart story. Tom Cotton, every conservative must get engaged to stop Democrat amnesty. What he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is this infrastructure bill. As I told you yesterday, check out our podcast, The Ways I Told You, that the studies have shown that only like 25 to 28% of the 3.5 trillion that 18 Republicans, by the way, voted for, that only about 25 to 28% have anything remotely to do with infrastructure. A big part of this bill, and this is what Senator Cotton is pointing out, is to grant amnesty to illegal immigrants in this country. Senate Republicans are sounding the alarm over an amnesty provision slipped into Senate Democrats' $3.5 trillion budget resolution framework they are seeking to shove through Congress via the filibuster-proof reconciliation process. Now, what that means is that normally under the filibuster, you have to get basically 60 votes in order to, overturn a filibuster, right? So that's a 60-vote majority you need. But if it's a budget issue, it can be done through reconciliation by a House and Senate panel with a simple majority. And that is what Tom Cotton is talking about. He's saying they're trying to slip amnesty, which they never could get passed through the full Senate with a 60-vote majority. They're trying to slip amnesty into this budget issue so that they can sneak attack you. On Monday, Senate Democrats unveiled their budget framework that includes spending $107 billion in American taxpayer money to give amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants. The language of the framework is vague, asking the Judiciary Committee members to give lawful permanent status to qualified immigrants. They're illegals. I'm tired of hearing that. Those who would qualify remains unclear. Well, if they pass this, it'll be everybody. You know that. Though Democrats have said in the past they want upwards of 8 to 10 million illegal aliens given amnesty, you know that won't hold. But listen to what Tom Cotton said. He said every conservative needs to get engaged to stop the Democrats' amnesty plan reconciliation. And I agree with him 100%. But I don't trust these Republicans, as I talked about earlier. I don't trust them at all. What I would say to you, and this is expanding on what Senator Cotton said, going back to the previous story, it's up to us, the American people. We have got, the rest of us, as I said, we have got to band together somehow to save this country from our own ignorance and apathy. We got to educate ourselves and others, motivate ourselves and others, activate ourselves and others, which means get people to do something. And then when we have to, when we get the chance to eliminate, like I said, I'd flush them all out. But Tom Cotton is right to bring this to the point. Republicans are voting for this. He said he is not. But if this thing passes, we are going to have another flood, even bigger than the 2 million flood we've already had with illegal immigrants. So just keep this on your radar screen. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to all of our social media sites, like them, share them with others far and wide. That helps us get the message. Please check out our sponsors, Big Daddy Unlimited. As I said, I've got some big news about to break about a couple of other major sponsors, international type sponsors coming to our show. I will reveal that to you very, very shortly. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation because she needs it, deserves it all the time. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.